On Friday, October 30th, the Urban Justice Center and New York City Councilmember Andy King will sponsor domestic violence legal outreach at the New York 12th District Co-op City office. Here to tell us more about the event is Councilmember Andy King. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here as well.
Pleasure to see you, sir. So can you tell me about what does this mean, domestic violence legal outreach?
Well, in the month of October, as we acknowledge domestic violence and what we have to do to prevent it or help families who are struggling with this, which we like to call a horrible disease. On Friday, this Friday the 30th, partnered up with the Urban Justice Center to offer legal outreach, the counseling, to do all that we can to help families. We understand that domestic violence is just not about an adult woman or adult male. It's something that affects the whole family. Young boys grow up, if you see your dad beating on your mom, you think this might be the normal relationships that you should have with the opposite sex. No, that's not the case. So we want to make sure that we save families before the crisis continues to have this revolving circle within the homes. Domestic violence is something that has an impact on entire communities as well. So what we've done in the City Council, we have, thanks to Councilmember Laurie Cumbo and our Speaker, Melissa Mark-Viverito, this fiscal year, we've allocated over $6.6 million to make sure that domestic violence is being serviced correctly and that we bring the numbers down of those who engage in such brutal activities. And domestic violence just isn't about putting physically, putting your hands on somebody. It's mental abuse that you offer, or even just the neglect that you offer to a family member. So we want to curb this. And in the City Council, we're putting our money where our mouth is. There is an initiative called DOVE, which is Domestic Violence Empowerment, and out of that $6.6 million that we've passed in this fiscal year, over 4.4 million of that is going there to do outreach, to provide legal services, even for safe spaces for if people need to be replaced. So we're doing our part to bring awareness. And I think one of the most important things that we're asking people to recognize the symptoms. If you're engaged, if you're part of this, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. You need to come out. That's the only way we end the cycle when you ask for help. A 2-year-old is not going to tell you that it's hungry unless it starts crying and tell you that it's hungry. That's the only way you're going to know. Right. So if you're getting hit at night or you're being emotionally beat up, protect yourself. And if you got children involved, you are the sole provider for your children, so you got to protect your children as well.
I think you hit on a really good point there. Like, domestic violence isn't just being beaten or physical. It can be emotional and mental as well, and it happens across the board, whether you're a child, an adult, or even the elderly especially. They get neglect all the time, or just where you're being constantly put down as a person, where your ego becomes deflated and you become dependent on someone because of the way that they treat you. And people get very scared about coming forward, and maybe they don't want to seem weak, or maybe because they've become so dependent, they don't want to lose that person. They feel like that is the only person that will ever love them. And that's part of domestic violence. So what are some of the things that people can find here at the outreach? Well,
we'll have a number of attorneys that will be there that will be offering counseling. And the reason we have it in the Co-op City, we need privacy. And one of the things that my Co-op City office offers is that privacy, that no one can feel, you'll feel comfortable, put it that way. We've made it a more comfortable setting as opposed to big open conversations, because not everybody wants to know that everybody knows they're going through this. So they will get information, and like I said, if you need placement, they will provide any placement for you. We've had people come in the office recently asking for help because they've been enduring domestic violence. And I want people also to know, even though this is the month of October, we're going to be doing this all year around. So on Fridays, every Friday, in my Co-op City office, we'll have counselors and attorneys there to help you. So we're asking everyone, if you know somebody, if you are a victim of it, reach out to my office, find out what you can do to help yourself, and save your families. You touched on something else. Domestic violence has no age limits. We do have a number of seniors who get abused. Not only do they get abused by maybe their spouses or their partner, but they get abused by their children as well. So we want everyone to say, hey, it's time for us to come together as a community, and there's no such thing as snitching when you're saving someone's life. So I'm asking everyone, if you know somebody who needs help, who's in denial, please reach out to us. Let us do our part, because it will trickle over from your apartment to the next apartment if you do not stop it now.
You're absolutely right. You were talking off camera about how domestic violence is a cycle.
Yes.
And if as a child, if you see that happening, more children in homes filled with domestic violence are more likely to engage in that violence when they get older. And like you said, it just trickles down and becomes more and more of an epidemic within any community. And it's not limited to one particular group, it's across the board. And that's scary, but we can prevent this.
We can prevent it, and we as a community have a responsibility. How many times have you seen on your show or on Eyewitness News or NBC4 or 12 that there was a domestic violence incident and somebody that was killed? But then when they interviewed the neighbors, oh yeah, we used to hear them arguing at time to time. We used to hear this all, but you never thought about giving a call to say,
but it wasn't
listen,
my place to say anything.
But you know what, it is your place,
Right.
because you know what, if you heard it and you have children, your children hear it as well. So what are you telling them? You know, what education are you giving them if you see someone is being hurt? How do you be a good neighbor? And that's what part of being a good neighbor. It's not that you're saying you're butting into someone's affair, but hey, let's bring awareness to something. It's called out. Maybe that woman in there is, like you mentioned earlier, is financially dependent on the male, or the male is financially dependent on the woman. It goes both ways. But you cannot sit by idly, because again, it spills out into your whole neighborhood.
Absolutely. We also wanted to touch on a gift. You were talking about the Gifted program.
Right. Last week, I'm also the co-chair of the Black and Latino Asian Caucus of the New York City Council. And last week we held a press conference because of the disparities in the gifted and talented programs in communities of color versus communities not of color. And what we've learned, there are a number of us, there's 26 of us, council members of color in the city council, and we've noticed that some of us don't even have gifted and talented programs within our district at all.
Wow.
Where some of our whiter colleagues have 18 and 20, have an abundance of them. So we're saying something is wrong with that process, and we're asking, and when we had the conversation with the chancellor, she had mentioned to one of the council members that, listen, it's because there's not enough of us who are applying. So today we're hosting a meeting at the NAACP at 4 o'clock for our principals of elementary schools and our early childhood centers to join us to talk about this, and more importantly, sign up, because we want to be able to deliver 5,000 applications to the chancellor by November 9th, which is the deadline, to say, hey, we have students, we have families who want their children to sign up, and we don't need to send our children outside of our neighborhoods to get the services. There was a time you walked in any given school and you had a gift in the town, and they would just call the brighter kids or your ESP classes, whatever the term you use. It wasn't set off apart away from different schools were allocated to be have these programs. So why don't we get back there? Because you can't tell us that in any given district that we don't have 12, because it only takes 12 children to open up 12 children who qualify with the intelligence to open a gifted and talent program. You're going to tell me in our schools we don't have 12 bright students?
I'm sure we do.
Yeah,
we have more than that.
Right. So what you do, you extract our best students from our neighborhoods, you send them to somebody else's neighborhood, and by the time they come back, they're not of our neighborhood anymore. So we're saying, no, we want to keep our kids right here. We have bright students right here, and we don't keep them right at home.
And then, of course, it makes the numbers look better in that other district, right?
It makes it look great. It makes it really great. And what has happened is that some of the elementary school teachers and you don't send their kids because they don't give the test because they don't, or tell parents about it because they don't want to lose their brightest students. How can you take all my brightest students and I'm left with everybody who was C and D students? It's not fair to the schools. And then we look at how schools are failing. Well, if every child in there is, you picked all the brightest apples and send them out to someone else's district to make their district look better, and unfortunately they send them out from communities of color and place them in other communities that are not of color to make that shine. So we're saying, no, we can't have this anymore. It's discriminatory, prejudicial, and we want to stop the practice now.
We have wonderful untapped potential in all of our neighborhoods, and we need to make that shown and seen.
So true.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, man.
Up next, Bobby C. will update us on the latest from the world of sports. But first, let's take a look at what some New York Mets fans had to say at Monday's pep rally hosted by Queensboro President Melinda Katz.